You're listening to REIA Radio, the nationally trusted name in real estate investing. We dig deep to discover investors' why in real estate. If you want to skip all the BS and get in investors' heads, you're in the right spot. Be one of the thousands to check out REIARadio.com.
We met in Vegas, so the atmosphere is completely different. I'm a motorcycle stunt rider primarily. And
What? I can add that to my list of notes here.
Yeah, I missed that. Who's the researcher on this?
You do like Vegas stunt events or what?
I'd love to look back because sometimes people get stuck on sometimes a past success, and that holds them back from future success because they don't want to go fail. If you have a goal and a mission, like, talk about it. It's okay. And even if you think you have some secret sauce, chances are the majority of the people out there aren't actually going to go and implement what you tell them.
There's that. I mean, it's life. We're in a business that we love talking about, and it's fun, and you can find deals, and it's sexy, and real estate development is cool, and there's like all these influencers about real estate investing. But the reality is, it's also life, and it's a job that you have, even if it's your business.
Welcome to REIA Radio, episode 125 with Brad Flanagan. What the hell was that?
I don't know. Hey, you know what?
The whole podcast is your moment. The moment isn't the intro.
That's not true. I took control of the void in the conversation there, so that's your fault, not mine.
I'm sorry, but you're like the void filler.
Anyway, welcome to REIA Radio, peeps.
Yeah, another episode.
Yeah, here we are. What's going on this week? So we have a shitload of more rain, which is really annoying.
Rain.
Yeah.
Actually, the wettest month in the history of Omaha, Nebraska since 1886.
At least it wasn't the moistest. That would be terrible.
I mean, it is kind of the moistest.
Ugh, God. Why did I even say that and encourage you? Anyway, ton of rain. And also,
are you getting flooded properties?
Last year, I'm ignoring that. Last year, we had the driest May in history.
Yeah.
So we went from the driest to the wettest in like record time.
It's the story of my life.
Enjoy you. God, I'm so sorry, Jessica. You have to put up with this every day of your life. So seriously, our hearts go out to you.
But did you have flooded properties?
Did I have flooded properties? Yes, I have a collapsed sewer line at one, which was super fun to deal with when I wasn't planning on it. And it's great to have a $10,000 to $15,000 expense that you had no plans on paying.
You're made of money. It's all good.
Yeah, it's just pouring in. Anyway, I yesterday get this call. But that's actually not true. So I go over to my Airbnb unit at my apartment building. There's an elevator in this joint. Okay,
two elevators. One goes right to the unit.
No, it's one elevator.
Oh, I thought it was
it goes right to the unit.
I thought it was a private elevator that shafted. It just went to your unit.
That's shafted?
I thought it had its own private elevator. That's not the case.
It's one elevator, and you have to have a key to go to the top level.
Got it.
And so it's anyway. So I go over there, and I'm like checking it out. I have guests coming in this weekend and all that, and I get between so like you get in, you hit the button, and you put your key in to get to the top level, the penthouse as we call it, and between the third and the fourth floor is where the penthouse is. It was the most terrifying elevator ride I've ever had in my life. I literally thought the thing was gonna like snap the cable and fall all the way to the basement out to my death.
Well, that's scary considering you own a building.
Yeah. So I don't know any of this is like, I don't know if there's any issues. I'm just going over there for like a random check, right? And so I'm going up between the third and fourth floor. I have video of this. It's shaking like super bad. Like I'm like kind of like wobbling on my feet. You know what I mean? And it's screeching loud. Like it felt like cables were grinding and like there's all this drop. And I'm like, oh my God, am I going to die? Like what's going on now? And then finally it like shudders to a stop. And it opens up into the penthouse unit. And I'm like, holy shit. I feel like I just went through a war. so I call, my property manager, and then I have like an elevator company that has a contract on the building. And I'm like, get them over there like right now. And also, this is funny. He's probably going to hate me for mentioning this, but I'm like, listen, we have to get like out of order signs printed up and put on the elevator like ASAP. Like this isn't like okay, well, I'll get to it tomorrow thing. Like right now, send somebody here right now. And so he's like, somebody will be there in 30 minutes. And I made signs already. And I'm like, all right, man, but like, look, make them like printed signs, not like handwritten, like amateur hour signs.
So they look legit.
Yeah. And so anyway, so his guy shows up, who's great, but he shows up and he's like running up and down the stairs because there's 4 levels, right? So he's got to post one on each level. And I'm picturing in my head, and this is me, and I didn't explain this, but I'm like out of order, temporarily out of order. That's what I was picturing. And you put it right in the middle of the elevator doors. So that's not what happened at all. Like he prints out this like printed, and it's in like 0.5 type. Like I literally can't read it. I don't have my readers, right? I'm just flying around.
It's all the disclosures.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. It's like this super small.
You could ride
type.
this elevator, but your life is at risk,
and it wasn't
insurance will not cover
exactly. and it wasn't even put like in the middle of the elevator. It was like put off to the side where it's like, okay, hey, by the way, wipe your shoes when we walk in. It wasn't like screaming, "Don't use this frickin' elevator. It's a hostile environment or whatever." Right? And I'm like, oh my God, seriously. Anyway, so the elevator guys show up, and I'm okay. This may age badly or whatever on this, but I am not confident at all in this guy's ability. Like he's kind of like one of those guys who like slaps the side of the thing or whatever. He's like, oh yeah, it looks good. Like it's it's not working. I'm like, okay, and I was committed to being there because I've been in a situation before where I've had elevators, not working, and then people show up and like I get kind of the aftermath where they're like, oh yeah, such and such wasn't working and now it's fine and whatever. And then there's another problem like a week later. And I'm like, I want to get eyes on this and figure out what's going on. So I got like an elevator 101 from this dude, even though I feel like that was his level of knowledge was 101 at best. So anyway, I'm there for 4 hours last night. I get done at probably...
Oh, so this is really recent.
Oh, yeah. This is last night. So, like, it's 8:30 at night. I finally get out of there for the last time. And I'm right into the top of this thing, right? And it's just, like I said, it's shuddering and screeching. And I'm like, holy shit, I'm going to die. Like, am I going to die? I don't know. But I got out of there, and I was like, well, that's not good. And so I line all this up, mobilize the troops. They come slap these microscopic notices on the doors. And the dude shows up and he's like, yeah, I might have to do this thing where I test it. And like, so they basically kill the power and the oil to the lift itself. So if you think about an elevator, you open up the shaft of the elevator. Don't get excited, Ted. And then at the bottom of it, there's basically like this huge, it's probably like a 8 or 10 inch diameter pole that goes up. And that's what the elevator slides up and down. Don't get excited, Ted, like I said. And there's like a jack that brings it up to the upper levels, and it has oil and hydraulic fluid, and there's like a whole thing. And I'm like, I don't know shit about any of this. So I'm like, look, man, just treat me like I'm 4 years old and tell me the basics. And that was right.
Treat you like you're 50, more or less.
Yeah. Anyway, he was probably at that same level of intellect. So he's telling me what he knows, which isn't much, because he's on the phone with a dozen supervisors. And he's like, okay, well, I did this. And like, I don't know what's going on now. What do I do next? And so he's like on level 3 tech support while I'm standing there the whole time. Anyway, long story longer, he adds oil to it. We ride up and down this elevator a bunch of times, and it's screeching like crazy. And finally, he gets it running at like 8:30, 9 o'clock, whatever. And I take off, and I'm like, look, man, can you come back? Like, I have Airbnb guests that are coming tomorrow, And I'm over there, and by the way, I'm also cutting up like fallen branches and crap from the storm. And like I'm hauling away all these bags of branches and cleaning the hallway and whatever. And like I have these tenants like, "Are you good, man? Like, do you need help?" They thought I was just some like random maintenance guy, which is fine. And I'm like, "No, I like." They're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, "Oh, I own the building." And they're like, "Why are you taking out the trash?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And I finally looked at one of them and I was like, "I don't know." And they kind of like half laughed like awkwardly. And I'm like, "Look, I'm over here. It needed done. I can't make this happen any faster than it would be if I was here. So I'm just grabbing stuff." They're like, "Okay, I respect that," or whatever. But anyway, that was my night. How you doing?
You talk about self-maintenance. I walked a building that was for sale recently. It was in kind of like the 90th and L area.
Okay.
And
right by my office.
yeah, so this guy, he's got like 60-something units over there, and he's looking to offload them. Price was pretty high, but since 1982, he's been self-managing this, and this
$6.5 million.
Yeah. So it was like 110,000 a unit ish. But the guy like literally was the maintenance manager. Like he lives across the street, and that was the thing that like his whole life was based on.
Yeah.
And it was the most pristine property I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And he's like, every time air conditioner goes out, I reroute all the new AC to the ground level from the roof. And I'm not going to do it, but he did it himself. If it was a unit turn, he did it himself. The hallways were impeccable. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, like, this was this guy's full-time job.
Yeah.
That he did nothing but maintain his property. He had the clientele in his property. He's like, my average age of this building is probably around 6 years old. He was under rented by almost 50%. Mm-hmm. And there was it was a beautiful building, but I just couldn't make sense of the property. But it was also, there was just so much love and passion put into this property.
Well, I think what happened there was, yeah, like you said, he kind of took a passion project and maintained it. It was his baby, and like made money for his family and all that. But like he didn't keep up with market rents, and then he priced it like he did keep up with market rents.
Well, he has it paid off.
Well, right, but that's beside the point. Yeah. I mean, if anybody else, like I'm selling it to you, you don't care if I have it paid off. What do you give a shit?
But for him, then those numbers made great sense. They took care of the bills, and he had the client. He had the tenants that he wanted.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that. Like you get it, right? Like,
yeah, I do.
He's what it's worth to him is not what it's worth to you or me.
No, it doesn't make sense at the price he was trying to seek for it.
Yeah, I mean, it was like well above market, especially for the rents. And anybody that buys that has got to be like betting on the possibility that they could increase rents to market rate. But that's really risky.
The average rent was like $750, and these properties could easily be at $1,500, especially in this part of town.
So that leads me to today's
Golden Nugget. And this Golden Nugget is brought to you by JM Real Estate Capital.
Hi, it's Rob, JM Real Estate Capital. We're the money guys that you need to know for all your real estate investments. Talk to us. We can do what your local bank can't or won't do. We don't have millions, we have trillions with a T to lend. 844 we close, or go online, jmrecapital.com. That's jmrecapital.com. JM Real Estate Capital, smart solutions for the real estate investor.
So today's golden nugget is when you're getting a property, when you're getting property information that you're reviewing and trying to decide if it's worthwhile investment. So there's a saying that's underwrite on actuals and then execute on what your pro forma is going to be But you have to, there's a nuance there. So when you're looking at a property and the seller is like, hey, I've taken really good care of this building, I know all these tenants, and like you're underwriting a deal that's self-managed. They have taken like a lot of TLC. Maybe they've given some price breaks to the people that are there. They've maybe have somebody living on site that's doing maintenance, or some of those kind of things.
All that was happening.
Yeah, so some of those things happen, and I'm not saying we're not here to say that's a bad route to take. Okay, it makes sense for some people, but if you have a free and clear property, you're paying people that live on site. And I experienced some of this last night when I was over there dealing with the elevator thing. Like I was waiting for the elevator tech to like finish his static test, which is basically him sitting there and watching if the elevator goes down or not. Like, literally, that's what it is.
And you're just paying your hourly fee.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, so I'm like chatting up people, and like, I have people coming asking me questions like, hey, do you need help around the property? And like, it was all that. And I'm talking to them all, and it's fine. But in this case, you're talking about an owner that owned this property for a long time, maintained it himself, rented out the units himself, and probably under rented them. Sounds like by a lot.
50%.
Yeah, and so my point to all this is like when you're looking at a property and you're asking for financials and you're buying from potentially an owner managed property, you're not going to get what you want out of that. You're not going to get something that satisfies you and says, I'm going to write an offer on this based on actuals. It's not how it works right now. I mean, that was like maybe 2008, 9, 10 that worked, but now it's like, okay, yeah, you're betting on the come because you have to say, okay, I see what you did there, but here's my plan, and I'm going to make you an offer that's a little bit of a premium above what the actuals are, but it's not actually based on the financials because you're never going to get a deal out of it. Mm-hmm. You're going to be so far apart in price that it doesn't even matter. Right. So my point to all this is if you're dealing with an owner operator of an apartment complex or a rental property, if you're talking to them, they're probably going to want to base their sale price on pro forma, and you're probably going to want to base your offer price on actuals. You have to be flexible in the middle about where you arrive at in price. But based on what your goals are, like, so it's an art more than a science.
I also think when I talk to my clients that I work with, I'm like, hey, going into this property, this is the number that actually does make sense for the purchase. And if we do come to an agreement on it, you're going to have to be prepared that this is not going to cash flow for up to 12 months because you're going to have to wait for these leases to turn before you can up the rents. And there is a good chance that these people that are living in here aren't going to see the same value. They think that this is the market rent, the $750 average in here, but really the market rent truly is on this particular property $1,500 per unit. And these people are going to probably say they're going to move out, but then they're going to realize when they start looking around that they're not going to.
There's nothing else out there for what they can rent it for.
But can they afford the double rent? And it'd be a life change for these people. It is going to be a headache if you were to take this property on.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuances, just like what you're talking about. When you come into a property that's been like grossly mismanaged, I'm not saying condition wise, but I'm saying like, financially. Right, yeah. So grossly mismanaged means somebody that's like half of market rent or above that slightly or whatever, even if it's a couple $100. And hey, it happens, right? Like I'm guilty of it too. I've done it in single families. Haven't so much when other people are managing stuff for me. But yeah, like you're going to run into situations like that, and you can't cater to people that want you to bet on the pro forma, not the actuals. So you got to meet in the middle a little bit. It's that kind of environment that we're in.
But if you're a newbie coming in, you're looking for your first like multifamily, you think that you're coming into this and you're like, oh man, the rents are so undermanaged. I can just jump right into this.
Yeah.
And this is a gold mine, but really you have a year of headache right there. And I don't think,
at least a year.
And I don't think people realize that. Like you're going to be putting money into this, like besides your 20% you're going to put down.
And the bigger the property, the longer it's going to take you to cycle through those leases. Mm. That's the challenge with it. So like you have let's say you have a 5-unit property or whatever, that's not really that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. But you get into like 20, 50, 100-unit properties, it's going to take you at least a couple years to cycle through leases and do the increases that you need to do, but at the same time not like get 6 on your side called on you.
I think this is going to be a great opportunity for us to like dive into this further, especially as like people we know are getting these type of properties, or we could do more of a case study based on something that you get or I get in the future too.
Yeah.
Well, let's get a little bit about today's podcast with Brad Flanagan.
Brad, oh man. So today's podcast is, if you're a fan of mindset and improving it and like figuring out ways that you can make your life more like just more put together and like goal oriented, this is the episode for you. He is all about like goals, planning, mindset, like fulfilling, your potential, those kind of things. And talk about like failing forwards. Guys had 2 marriages to the same wife.
Second chance, all about second chances.
Second chances. So yeah, listen to this, and you're going to learn a lot about like what to do and what not to do, and how to overcome adversity, and like a lot of starting out with a fun life and then transitioning into more of like being responsible. So there's a lot of that theme in here.
There's some people I talked to prior to this podcast happening, and they were very interested to learn more about Brad. But Brad's based here in Omaha, and one thing that like I was talking with Owen is like, I don't know where to start with this, like how we lead off, like military vet, coach, family coach, business coach. He does mortgages. They have real estate. They have a huge portfolio, and it's very diversified from short term to midterm to long term to vacation rentals.
To flipping.
Yeah. I mean, they do a little bit of everything. So I think that you guys are going to get a lot out of this. I mean, it's just a great, wholesome conversation.
Amen, brother.
So with that, let's get into today's podcast with Brad Flanagan. Okay, Brad, you got to tell me the story. Like, you showed up here yesterday?
I was so excited. I just figured I should move it up a day.
And then, so you showed up, and you're in the front lobby, and then you just went ahead and started conducting a meeting, or what happened out there?
Steve saw me, so he ran to the front door. No, he was taking a look, seeing who was attending his seminar or his little coaching session, and then he invited. So I was like, I didn't even realize I was on Friday in the calendar, and so it was a dry run.
So you did speak.
I did.
Yeah. What did you guys talk about up there?
It was about the shift. So he was talking about price in homes, and it was focused specifically on like listings and setting expectations. So I just chimed in with questions and see a little bit from the outsider's perspective, like what an agent goes through that is listing a property, and in a market where, depending on the price point that you're at, what's the marketability and how do you price it, and how quickly should you expect that thing to move?
Yeah. So I'm going to be fully honest with you. When we knew we were having you come, I was like, where do we start with this? Do we talk to the fact that you were an Army vet? Do we talk about second chances? Do we talk about work-life, family-life balance? Do we talk about you with a mortgage background? Do we talk about your huge portfolio that you got that you built, or the speaking that you do, the coaching you do? I just didn't know where to start. And
that's obvious now.
Yeah.
This is the secret sauce of REIA Radio, Ted, that you're describing to everyone out there.
I mean it is.
Behind the scenes stuff is not to be talked about, all right? Jeez.
But when I listened to your podcast, and it's Financial Freedom with Flipping Flanagan's, and when I was listening to that, you guys really talked about like second chances, and I really liked when it came to the collaborations that you have with your wife. And when it comes to our spouses, this is a constant conversation that we have here on the podcast. And, Owen's wife is definitely not involved with his business at all.
Nope.
And my wife runs the REIA side of our business,
and Ted's life.
And she's the woman behind everything in the household. That's for sure. But Jamie, your wife, which is a successful realtor, how do you guys have that balance, and what do you guys do together in your partnership?
Well, first, I think you define it as it's a lifestyle and not a job.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the same feedback I give to a client or a partner when they're like, "I'm sorry," and I'm like, "What are you sorry for?" in Mexico, I'm lucky to be working while I'm in Mexico, or I'm glad to be able to have a conversation, because I think we forget that there was a time where we weren't busy and we were striving to be busy. And so that understanding has been huge. I kind of like was sitting here, I'm like, I wish she was here, because there is a different chemistry that comes in, and it's like leaning into the fact that that person makes us better. They're the reason that we potentially strive to do the work that we do and become successful, so that we could be attractive and either acquire them or retain them in our lives. So, the pillow talk is oftentimes like business.
Well, full disclosure, we've done several podcasts where we've had, both spouses here, and we found that one side wouldn't say something because the other side was here, or one side wouldn't talk because the other side was here.
Yeah.
And also with partnerships. And so we're totally down with having Jamie on the podcast, just so you know. And then maybe after we have her, we can bring you both in to talk at the same time.
It's a series.
Series 1, 2, and 3. But we feel like we just don't. People kind of hold back a little bit when they're partners here. Do you agree with that or not?
I can see that, and I definitely think that is present in maybe the majority, but I've been encouraged to be in that vulnerable state and to, I guess, be open, because then the feedback, that frequency that you get on is totally different. I mean, there's some places and people you can be around where you're actually uncomfortable because you're in different places. And so when you do open up and you do share authentically and unapologetically, oftentimes, because it's like, I am who I am, and if I hold back, I don't grow. And so that's a common theme that comes up in a lot of my coaching or mentoring type conversations. It's like we oftentimes feel like we got to hold ourselves back in order to grow, which is like two opposing schools of thought, and they don't encourage that. You got to get uncomfortable in order to grow.
All right, I feel like we need to rip the Band-Aid off here and expose what we're talking about, because we've been beating around the bush here. You and Jamie, your wife, have created a business partnership, and you have a lot of stuff going on, which we're going to dig into, but you weren't always on the same page, and Ted just dropped this bomb on me before you walked into the studio.
I didn't mean to drop bomb. It's just conversation with notes.
Anyway, for the second time in 2 days you've been here, but you're what happened? So you guys got married, obviously got together, got married, and then what? Like, tell the story here, because I'm fascinated by this. You're the only person, probably the only couple I've ever met that has been through what you're about to describe.
Well, one, Ted, thank you. I mean, like, I'm actually humbled that you've done the research that you've done, and two, I'm glad to inspire the intrigue. Well, we met young, and like we were blazing in like a freedom, young 20-somethings. She's 2 years younger than I am, and she's very clear about that a lot of times. Yes, I'm 40. We met in Vegas, so the atmosphere is completely different. I'm a motorcycle stunt rider primarily. And
what? I can add that to my list of notes here.
Yeah, I missed that. Who's the researcher on this?
You do like Vegas stunt events or what?
So yes, I was a freestyle motorcycle stunt rider. So like the big 600cc motorcycles, the ones that are oftentimes doing stupid stuff on public highways. We were more in a controlled setting. So if you ever were
been in some movies,
music videos is probably about as far as that got, and then like Pink's All Out. I don't know if you remember that show on ESPN. I think it was Speed TV.
Okay,
something along those lines. But used to do intermissions in between like the races. Back in Mid-America Motorplex was popping back when I moved here, and so we would go do the intermission shows while the races weren't going down on the drag strip. So.
This podcast took a total left turn from where I thought this was going to go. Okay.
Wait till I tell you my pickup line. You're going to love the pickup line.
Okay. What was the pickup line with your wife?
I have a kangaroo.
What?
So I lived in a house with guys who were the Guinness World Record holders at the time for Bella Tabak's Riders of the Thunderdome, the Globe of Death. So they had the show down on Fremont Street.
Like Mad Max?
I suppose.
Okay.
The motorcycles that go like this in the ball. Yep.
So he's spinning his finger around like picture a motorcycle rider riding around
a steel ball
globe on the inside.
I can't remember if they hit 4 Gs, but I know they hit like 3 Gs when they're doing that. I was not a performer. I was fortunate to train in the globe, but never got to perform. So I worked that show with them, and we did a lot of collaboration in conjunction with them for different shows at the hotels and such out there. So we drew crowds, and then the crowds typically were then pushed into the casinos or into the clubs that we were performing at. And so nonetheless, down on Fremont Street, and ran into Jamie, and I saw her like from a distance, and definitely caught my eye. I had a great wingman, and we just got done with the show, and so he was kind of helping facilitate the introduction. And then she saw the picture of the kangaroo, and she goes, text that to me. And it was like that point, I'm like, I got your number, we're done, like this is good, I'm moving in the right direction. And then he actually left me, so she had to give me a ride home that night. It was awesome. And
I felt like Owen would be a great wingman for me.
I was a really good wingman. I had my best man was an Omaha firefighter for he just retired, but he's a really good looking guy, like I've been told. He's like 6'4", good but he has like he had like 2 minutes worth of conversation in him whenever we were out to the bar. Like, I'm a firefighter, I have a hot tub, and then he started looking for help after that. So I was the charisma in the equation there. But anyway,
looks. He was the looks.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Please continue.
I got it. I mean, now you have him for the looks,
now
right?
Ted's around. I'm the looks.
It's my flowing locks that you're loving.
Gross. Nobody wants to see these, but show them for YouTube.
But no, like we of course were irresponsible in a sense, and just living life.
Hang on, you're really glossing over the kangaroo thing. What the hell, man?
Bouncer, yeah.
His name was Bouncer.
Yeah. So it was Bella Tabak's. He's the true acquirer of the kangaroo, but he was out shopping for paint and ran into an exotic pet guy and had a kangaroo, and he came home with a kangaroo and no paint.
Did you just call someone Bella Tabex with a straight face? His name is Bella Tabex.
Yeah,
okay.
Tabak, Tabak. Still in Vegas to this day, but it was a whole different world, right? I didn't realize what that was doing for me, though, because that was such a hard career field to pursue. There's a lot of competition. There's not a lot of organization and structure. And so you have to create that, and you have to have the discipline to not go into like the party side of it. You got to be in good health to throw around a 300-400 pound motorcycle. You have to figure out the times to help figure out how you fund the efforts that you have, whether you're traveling and trailering and driving and finding locations. So it was a business, but I didn't realize it at the time. And so that freedom then was forced into responsibility because we found out we were having our daughter, who's now going on 15. And so she happened to be from Nebraska. So I was like, well, I had a father of somehow exists biologically out there, but I've never met him. And so that was a fuel for me to say, whatever it takes, I'm coming with you. I know we may not be a thing, but I'm not going to not be present for a person I'm responsible for bringing into this world.
Okay, hang on. So you guys obviously got together, found out she was pregnant. She's like, I'm from Nebraska. You had familial longing, was that fair to say? Or maybe like an absence in your life since you never knew your father? Or am I projecting here?
It was just more of I knew what it felt like to be the kid who didn't have the dad. Yeah. And so I'm not going to put anybody else in that position.
All right. Now, this is probably not, you're going to feel ambushed here, but did you think this was like, at first, a one-night stand, and like she was just going to go back to Nebraska and things were going to be like as normal? And
This is not. This is a real estate podcast.
No, I don't. I definitely don't feel like it. I love it because I love reflecting. I think that's a super important part of existing and thriving. I knew from like the beginning that she could be somebody that I would like long term want to be with. I was not smart enough to act that way. Made many a dumb mistakes, but I didn't. It wasn't a one. It wasn't a one-night stand. It was
always use protection kits.
Where are you originally from, anyway?
Chicago.
Okay, and so you ended up in Vegas.
Hang on. Let him.
And then you're going to Nebraska now. Okay.
So Vegas, yeah, we make our way to Nebraska, and that it wasn't a one-night stand. It was like I was trying to hold out, if anything, you know. I'm like,
And she's like, I thought this was a one-night stand. What are you doing here in Omaha?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she tried to get away
She's
from
like, I'm
me
good, man.
multiple times. And she succeeded in creating distance at times, and not because I didn't do stupid things to cause her to want that, but came to Nebraska, and I had previously dabbled in mortgage. My first position was back in Chicago before departing for Vegas.
I wondered if you were going to come and try and put applications in places that had like motorcycle riding around a globe jobs, because there's not a lot of them around Omaha.
No, it's hard to document that income.
World of Wheels always has some good motorcycle riders at it.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because I don't know. Oh, we can get technical about bikes and stuff, but I just use it as a source of energy because it was like at some point in time, I was damn good at it, and I had seen more success than likely the average rider. And so then I'm like, if I could do that in that tougher industry, why wouldn't I be able to be in a more organized and established line of business that probably pays better too?
I'm learning so much about Brad today.
Everything is news to me.
There's a gentleman I work out with, Marty Cromwell.
Ooh,
shout out to him because I know he's listening right now. And Marty's like, so Brad's the most interesting person in the world, and I was like, I got him coming on the podcast here, and Marty's like, oh my god, I'm listening to that. He goes, I want to know more about him and his background and who he is.
Okay.
So here you go, Marty.
I got to keep some mystery out there, Marty. So I'm going to hold back now.
So what then? You arrive in Omaha, and you're a baby daddy. You're trying to fan the flames of this budding relationship with your eventual wife.
Yep.
What happened then?
I actually took a job at a gym as the director of personal training. And worked myself to the bone. Like, the gym lifestyle is terrible. I feel bad for anybody who has to like be there before the sun comes up and they leave after it comes down. And so fortunately I had a resume out there on Indeed. I got a phone call from a mortgage broker, and I was like, we're gonna do it, like whatever it takes. I've got to get some sort of semblance of a organized life, maybe make a little bit more money, and then be able to be a present father, not just be in the same vicinity as where that kid I created is. So, and it was still hard, though. I mean, that was 2008, 2009, going back into the mortgage.
Great time to get into mortgage. Probably the best time in history to get into mortgages.
In a new market. Like, I didn't know anybody except for this woman that I have to figure out how to be a father and a significant other to.
And you guys are dating at this point?
We were.
Yeah.
I mean, we moved in. It didn't go smooth, right? We felt forced into it, I believe. And you make mistakes like when you're that young, and so
but you showed up. I mean, there's a level of respect there. You're like,
I hope so.
Yeah.
I
mean, obviously, because you're
still together.
Yeah.
And plenty of opportunities for escapes. So we, however, struggled, and so then I went back on active duty in the Army in Ashland, and we separated, and it took like 2 years to fully get divorced, and the whole time I know I was opposed to it, and it just took that though to give myself the opportunity to reflect and say, who are you, what are you, and what do you kind of like stand for? And so I was like, I'm a father first, and then I'm always going to be there and I'm going to support. And I think through that, showing up and actually accepting the responsibility, I was still always like, hey, if she needs something, you're saying yes. I had to tell myself that. That's when affirmations and incantations started to actually become a part of my life, and realized how scary this place is. And sometimes they say, don't go in alone.
Now, affirmations, I mean, that's not just something you start doing. Were you reading a book, or was there like a mentor in your life that was telling you to start doing these types of things? Or were you just sitting in the mirror and you're like, I'm just going to talk to myself?
There was a book, I can't remember who the author is, but it was Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life. That was like the first book that was on personal development that I read. And eventually then I got to this book called The Power of a Praying Husband, stumbled on that. It was like a free book at the armory that I was at in the Army. And I realized, like, because I think the common thing is, how do I change them? And that book was very apparent of how do you change yourself and change the way you think in order to actually affect real change. And so I suppose that was it. It was like journaling and that kind of stuff allowed me to actually focus on the things I could control, which is really myself.
You really went through a whole entire like personal life change. I mean, like, you went from being this party boy, it's safe to say, right?
Oh, yeah.
In Las Vegas, to a person that really like broke down yourself and figured yourself out and started, like, how do you just make that change? I mean, a book doesn't do that. I mean, is it your Army background? You know, is it your military? I mean, what is it that really was that moment that changed you to be this different person?
One of the first thoughts is probably the fact that when you're the father of a daughter, and then you like have that perspective, and like, I think your perception and vision of a woman in general changes as a father of a daughter. And gosh, I just knew I wanted more growth and fulfillment, because a lot of that stuff that we pursue as guys, and I would almost say like dudes, because it's short-term happiness, and there's something beyond the struggles and the challenges that's indescribable in the sense of happiness and fulfillment. And so, gosh, I put chills in my arms. And I was like, who does she want in her life? And what don't I possess of those values and characteristics? And then what do I need to do to go and become that? How do I cultivate those values, characteristics? And I mean, you just look back, and I think sometimes we just go so fast because we're on this autopilot. Joe Dispenza''s breaking the habit of being yourself. We get, by I think the age of 33, we're stuck in these habits. We just formed these perspectives based on our past experiences, and they were uneducated. And so I was like, well, shit, I'm not in control of myself at that point. That's why I cold plunge. Getting in cold water never is fun, especially in Nebraska. It hits different. Arizona and Mexico, cold plunges are great.
You're like, I'm already cold, and I'm getting something colder.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then I realized that, like, this is how we control the outcome. This is how we control ourselves, and we actually do what we want. And a lot of times it's disguised as something that's very challenging or difficult.
I really feel like God gives certain men daughters, because if you look at your background, Owen, my background, obviously your background, I mean you were a bartender in your life. I bartended and I ran a nightlife company. I have friends that have done crazy lives, and having a daughter does change your perspective and who you are and how you act.
Yeah.
Well, apparently,
So
I got a double dose of daughters, so like apparently I'm getting like, we're even, God. Like, if you're listening out there,
Do you have
we're good now. Yeah, I've got two. We have a dog and a cat.
female?
No, both Both guys.
Oh,
That's
right.
the only testosterone I have in my house other than myself, Ted, before you say anything. So, okay, I'm curious, Brad, on now, just to recap here. So you met in Vegas, hit it off, hooked up, had a daughter on the way, got married, and things didn't go according to plan. You basically took that time to self-reflect and said, okay, instead of what did they do wrong, you focused on, and I'm paraphrasing here, but you focused on yourself, and you focused internally and said, what is she looking for in a man, and where are the gaps in what I offer and what she's wanting? And you had a daughter to, to cement the deal, right? Because she needed a father figure in her life, and you felt the absence of in your past not having that. Maybe I'm putting stuff on you.
You are.
So, but I'm curious though. So you had drifted and separated and eventually divorced. What happened next? How did you guys get back together and rekindle things? What was that like?
Oh, that's awesome. Well, and so part of that also, I think that we skipped was that eventually that relationship that you lost is they find somebody to replace it, and that was the most difficult thing. Is like if you see another guy coming in to potentially be a father figure,
I could not imagine.
And so then it's hard to say it'd be hard to attempt to ignore the fact that you failed at something. As much as you might want to blame somebody on the other end, it's a two-person game. And so I fortunately looked at it and said, you failed. What did you do wrong? And even if not that person, what could you do differently the next time in order to make sure that you succeed? So yes, 2 years of going through the divorce, nasty, it wasn't like it was an amicable one. It eventually wore through all that craziness, and it was mutually agreed upon. We came up with the plan. We had the parenting plan in place, so on and so forth. But she was an entrepreneur. She's always been an entrepreneur. She had her own business at the time. And I still, like I said, I'm always going to say yes. You need help with taking care of Hannah? I'm there. Doesn't matter if it's my day or your day. That's just a guideline. How we act and how we execute is completely different. So she was doing a lot with the business, and I was happy to help. And so that caused a lot of interaction from, dumpsters and throwing stuff away to business side of it. And so she, as any entrepreneur in the early stages, spent a lot of hours there. And
So she was in real estate at the time?
No, she actually owned a salon and spa. She's an esthetician.
Right.
Prior to real estate, she's an esthetician by trade. So it's like, obviously, there's a lot. And I'm very reflective, so I can get into
this
the
is
details.
going to be a 10-part series.
So anyways, we meet at the Phoenix.
Over 120th and Blondo.
Yep.
Yeah, in Omaha.
I lived on 121st in Blondo, so I stumbled home from the Phoenix a few times.
So do you remember E. Wellington's?
Yeah.
She bought that and then there's always some sort of a mission or something behind it, and she's very skin conscious. I love it because I can ask her all the questions and be like, what's this? Can you squeeze that?
Can you pop this? You're going Dr. Pimple Popper right there.
But so then she had this mission to get rid of the tanning beds that were in there, and then converted that to more of a skincare type situation. So anyways, we met there to do the exchange, and she was, at the end of the day, one of the coworkers were there, and it was like all of the bad had gone, and we laughed and just had this awesome time. And I think that opened the door to spending more time together. And so although we've been married twice to each other, we had 2 kids out of wedlock. And they're, whatever.
Now, how old was your daughter during this
7
time
years
frame?
apart.
70.
Gosh. So that would have likely been around 2012. And so she was born in 09, 10, 11, 12, 4. at that time.
So she really didn't know what was going on.
No,
she
I mean, well, she knew, and she kind of recalls it because she
Okay.
had to go back and forth between mom and dad's house, and she remembers some of those times because that cultivated a whole different relationship with your kid when you don't have another parent to steal the time or captivate the time. So it taught us so much. Oh man, I'd love to look back because sometimes people get stuck on sometimes a past success and that holds them back from future success because they don't want to go fail. And then some hold on to the failures and they don't achieve the success because they see those failures as opposed to failing forward, I think is a deal for you. Those were learning lessons. They were things that happened for us, not to us. And what could we learn from them? Like I showed up, I was always holding, Tony Robbins talks about effective blaming. I would blame the biological father for not being there, but in turn that gave me such values to be a father. I'm a better father because of it, so I got to thank him for that shit too.
You know what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Isn't that what they say?
Yeah.
Can you sing that?
Yeah, there's a song.
No.
Ted.
Is there?
Yes. Pink.
Oh, I don't listen to Pink. Yeah, that's not my type of music.
Well,
there.
okay.
They don't play
All right.
that on REIA Radio.
I'm more of like a Tool guy.
You are a tool. Anyway, okay. So when did real estate enter the recipe of the Flanagans reuniting? And I'm just fascinated with this story.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Working on being a storyteller, I suppose. So she worked the front desk at the brokerage that I worked at, and that was what exposed her to real estate, and that's ultimately what led to more involvement in how she got licensed, because she originally got licensed in 2009. And so we didn't get married till 2010, divorced 2012, remarried 2015. Shit, I'll mess that up.
Ted's going to put up a graph of
Please,
the timeline
yes. Let's work on that.
in the show notes.
That's not going to happen.
He's really good at the show notes.
And so she maintained the license, did really well in the initial phase, and then the passion for the skincare side of things did take over for a little while. And then somewhere along the lines where we were kind of rekindling things, we were at a real estate sales training and engaged in conversations with a young lady, Christina Young. They had a home building company at the time, and they were looking for somebody to sit in models, and Jamie kind of volunteered for that. So she was then letting real estate come back into the life a little bit after the burnout that comes from being a salon owner operator, and she crushed it. Like it was really good, and she was still aware that, hey, your income takes care of our child. Like I'm still going to refer you. I'm not going to have animosity. So she did a great job with that. Helped me be a better lender for realtor partners because at that point I can understand the behind the scenes a little bit better. And that then grew into her leaving the salon business and the divorce where she had her house, I moved out of, I bought my own house, then she moved into that house, and that converted the first house to a rental property.
Right. It's the natural progression of marriage. Remarriage. Your former wife. Okay, so man, this is a like choose your own adventure book. What was your first foray after the dust settled a little bit? You guys got back together, rekindled it. She moved into your house that you found after you got divorced.
Yep.
So you're building back up. What was the move?
So the house was a reminder of the fact that we split, and so it was how quickly can we get rid of this house? Mm-hmm. And so 8 months later we sold it and got lucky. The market was doing well, so we still sold it for a profit despite the fact it was only 8 months later, and we made improvements, and we bought a project like the live-in flip. The you've been there.
That's what all rekindling marriages. That's the best possible thing that you could do.
How can we make things more complicated?
Yeah, let's make it more stressful to live together.
You said I've been there.
Neil's house.
Oh, okay.
So we bought that in 2016, and I mean, it was a project. It was, every piece of it was touched, interior, exterior, and it ended up being a home we loved. It was painful to depart it, and sometimes we look back and we're probably, why did we? And so that project was very inspiring because it over doubled from what we had purchased it for to what the end value was at the time that we decided to sell. And so through that, it gave us encouragement in our abilities. It proved there's a clear ability to communicate and collaborate. She's a very much a visionary, and I'm more of the implementer or integrator. I work on being a better visionary because I think that planning can lead to procrastination and holding back. So I've done a ton of transformation in that space, and that just comes with the development and the transition from being like an execution guy to maybe a more of a leader mentor guy.
You know, one thing I wanted to call out here is it's apparent after listening to you kind of like tell your story here that you're a cerebral guy. You pay attention to what your reality is compared to what someone's perception of your reality is. And you've done a lot of work on self-improvement and like self-actualization and those kind of things. I'm curious, like, I don't know where I'm going with this other than the fact that there are a lot of people out there that don't read the type of books that we're talking about right now, like self-improvement, like developing good habits, like realizing things about yourself that are holding you back, and how you can, be selfless and really grow yourself through being selfless. But imagine the amount of people out there that never have either the opportunity or the awareness to discover these things about themselves, and it's kind of sad. But it's just, humanity is a fluid thing, and I think there's the echelon of people that take the opportunity to learn a lot about themselves and apply it to their life, and they can affect multiple, exponential people throughout that if they have the right platform. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but I just think it's impactful when you can take the steps of really looking in the mirror and doing something about it and owning it, instead of just puffing yourself up and saying, that's not me, or not wearing it, is basically where I'm going with this.
Exactly. And I love the word cerebral. So it's funny that you use that, because it's one of my favorite descriptors for even a series on TV. I want it to intrigue or confuse and create the opportunity to think and problem solve. And so, yes, it's one of the things that helps me get outside of the imposter syndrome symptoms is realizing that everybody's in a different place. Like, you can hear the same words, or listen to the same words, but hear something completely different, one person to the next. And the minute we stop internalizing it and making it about us, is the minute that transformation begins, and that the development, that growth starts to take place.
Now, part of your development growth is you guys do coaching, and you do business coaching, but you also do couples coaching. Is that correct?
We have begun that journey as well. Yes. So part of that realization is for a guy especially, the source of that energy, that determination, it starts with that pursuit of the person who kind of completes you, not just attracts you. And it's what causes us to want to be better. And then sometimes we get that and then we stop. And to be better for our kids, because if we work hard for our kids and we demonstrate well, they can surpass us almost pretty quickly. When I read the stuff that my 9-year-old sends me in a text message, his ownership of things that he should own as being a responsible person, it's like, holy cow, his development was faster than my daughter's development. And if I don't stay on my game, he might pass me up, and that might teach him to like stop and slow down. Not that you should get confused with, because there's plenty who get materialistic and maybe go too far with it and lose balance completely, which again, I don't believe in balance. It's counterbalance. But I think that there's a difference between having too much drive and focusing on unfulfilling things versus like having a mission and a definite purpose, as Napoleon Hill would probably say. I
think when you're growing up, at least in American society, we get taught as kids early on, like these are your expectations. This is what you're going to be measured on. You need to study for this. You need to do well on tests. And there's this whole school system that is what we know, right? We grew up with it. And when you're released into the wild as, an 18-year-old, and whether or not you go to college, that really doesn't matter. But if you decide that you want to become an entrepreneur and you want to start your own business, you don't maybe want somebody's thumb on you all the time. Maybe that's your motivation. Maybe it's just you want to eat what you kill and live your own destiny because you're more motivated than everybody else. There's inherent challenges with that that I think don't get talked about a lot, and that is the lack of a measuring stick other than your own when you're an entrepreneur. And you don't have a grading system that says, you're doing great. Keep doing that thing where you're doing podcasts on Friday mornings and drinking old fashioned. Like, nobody's coming along and giving us an F for our effort here. Right? But at the same time, you kind of figure things out along the way. But it's almost like you go from having sight to being blinded when you're 18 and you decide that you don't want to follow the path of getting a job. Right? And you decide to pave your own way and explore things where there's opportunities and risks, and there's no guidance from really anyone unless you seek it out yourself. That's the risk of being an entrepreneur, like one of the big ones. Right. Is like if you don't have the wherewithal to grade yourself along the way in a dispassionate way where you're not like giving yourself kudos where you shouldn't have them, then it's going to be a really tough ride along the way.
Exactly. And a lot of the measuring stick is often just financial. And then all of a sudden people are like, well, now I do have the freedom to choose what I want to do. So then it has to be something more than just the money. And that was like a spiritual or a God thing at that point. I probably 2016, I was like, what's my freaking purpose?
Yeah.
And then I tried volunteering at the church and doing these nuanced tasks, and I'm like, it's just not cut out for watching the kids or waving a stick in the parking lot. And so I said, what is my purpose? And constantly get asked questions about, hey, what's money this, money that, the financial decision, this or that, would be good, would be bad. And I'm like, holy crap, the steward of people's finance kind of just came over me. And the minute I realized, like, hey, the focus is how can I make an impact, the paychecks even get bigger. And so then you just focus on doing the right thing or making a big impact for a positive for other people. And it just starts unfolding and leading to so much more than just like, oh, I want to make that number and I want to buy that thing.
The problem with money and commission jobs, or like if you're a business owner, is kind of like the biggest commission job and also the biggest risk because you're on the hook for the expenses. But it's like dopamine hits. So it's like looking at your smartphone and you get like rewarded short term for looking at your phone and scrolling through reels and all that, right? It's what the social media companies rely on. Mm-hmm. We're reliable physical beings in that, like, they show us something that like is enjoyable, we're going to have a dopamine spike and we're going to seek that behavior just like a rat in a cage, right? Mm-hmm. There's tests that they've done countlessly on this. But it's financial rewards can be the same thing. It's almost like, they have rats where they give like cocaine in the water, and then they have an like actual water in a different dropper, and they over time just completely ignore that to the point of starvation. Mm-hmm. Like finances, dopamine hits are kind of related. And if you measure yourself just on that, you're not going to live a very fulfilling life, and eventually you're going to lose your sense of purpose and all that. But like, I think it's a really hard thing to manufacture. It has to happen to you, not, like, it has to happen to you through your own searching and efforts, not just be like, oh, I guess I'll do this and this is my purpose. It's got to be authentic, if that makes sense. I don't know. It
does.
Like,
And that's where like the burnout starts to come in, because it's like, I'm same old thing again. And that's how the relationship piece came into play, because you realize that you can break these redundant or crazy cycles that we go through, and it becomes a bigger, again, purpose. Like, you get employees, and now it's about how to help them thrive. And all of a sudden this thing just starts to grow, and you look back and you're like, wow, it's quite impressive. Now what? And you can go into that entrepreneur cycle, and then there's this lack over here, and then that lack over here starts to create lack over there. So that's why we went back to like relationship and foundation, because I realized like how much of that needed to be in the right syntax or the right order, and developed in a certain way to go and have a bigger impact on the professional side. And the more I do that, the closer business and family become like one in a crazy way.
You mentioned like what you're doing at your church, doing the outside, waving people on. I went through that. I was a usher for 14 years. I chaperoned 20 youth trips to the number. And COVID happened, and I went from being the, known face at church, fourth generation at our old, very old 1800s church that,
oh my gosh,
that we attend, and I just kind of like fell out. There was a little bit of a political standpoint, because they started bringing politics into our church. And I don't feel like church should have politics. I feel like it should be a neutral place for politics. They shouldn't take a side. Mm-hmm. But I feel like I'm missing something, because I don't do those chaperoning, youth trips that I feel like I got a lot out of. But I've also now put that energy into my REIA group, and I'm trying to transform different lives in a different way. So I really kind of grasp onto what you're saying there, because that was the thing I grasped on for years, and that was the thing that gave me fulfillment. And now I found a different way to give fulfillment, but also gives back to me financially.
Right. Well, and probably spiritually, because you're changing lives. Like, at the end of the day, that's one of the most inspiring things, and why I've been showing my face more at these events, because I realize how much care, giving unconditionally there is in collaboration. And I've seen more of it in recent years than in the past, or maybe pre-COVID. We were all busy, and we all got more than we maybe expected, and a lot of people probably stopped setting goals because they were exceeding them without trying. And to me, church is a community, not a location, and you have a community. Like, I don't go downtown, and I went downtown to go to that REIA, and I was like, wow, this is a big production. And like, even where we're sitting right now is a great and impressive production. So kudos to you. And
before, we were in an apartment building, just so you know, downtown.
Hey, we gotta purpose that real estate. So I wouldn't be discouraged at all as far as like that level, because somebody's there. There's generally a lot of volunteers in that space. It's how do you get to the deeper levels, because you have every level of investor that attends a lot of these events, it seems.
Brad, I could probably talk about your background for hours here, and I feel like I have already.
Yeah,
but
we want to.
But can you tell us kind of like how you and Jamie caught traction with being involved in real estate together? And what was your first move when you decided that was the path that you were on? Was, buying investment properties and kind of evangelizing real estate to the masses and all that?
Yeah, I think we really leaned into the ideas that came in. And it was like, you don't really always know exactly what's going to happen, especially when it's the first time you're going to do something. However, if an opportunity presented itself and the idea was there, we took action towards it. And so when a family member would pass and somebody would inherit the property, we would be willing to make the purchase and do the work because most just want to divest from that and then move on. So we took on that opportunity. We would want to hold for long term, and I think the competitive advantage I had was that I'd been structuring loans for a period of time up until that point, very organized, very spreadsheet oriented, and I would do a better job than likely a commercial banker would when becoming the borrower. And so that's why I say being a lender turned into me being a professional borrower, and was very, very grateful and lucky to have some of the bankers that I'd worked with to have that kind of faith in me as a first-time investor. And we did a good job of identifying equity. I would give a little credit to the economic cycle that we were in. We did see good appreciation, and were able to re-leverage the equity for more acquisitions. So it was about knowing the numbers and being analytical. And then, like I said, my wife being more of a visionary, she had an eye for a finished product. She could walk through it and say, if we do this, that, and the other thing. I've been in and out of enough houses. She was now in full-time in the real estate world. Did really well in advising sellers and gaining listings. And so if the seller was apt to sell quickly and not want to burden the market time and deal with putting the dog somewhere and showing the house, we would be able to come to the table with an offer that would make sense for them.
Let me ask you something. So I don't think this gets brought up enough on podcasts personally, but when you're when you have a guest on like you are, and you're interviewing them and you kind of like hear their whole story unfold, I really feel like there's a disconnect with describing what your financial situation was at various times. So, and I'm going to simplify this and say, like, we're good, or man, it was rough, or like we had to really figure out what we were going to buy and what we weren't going to buy at the time. Like, can you maybe simplify that a little bit and just say, okay, when we were starting out, like, on this path, we were really struggling and we didn't know where our next paycheck was going to come from? Or were you guys kind of like, we have some tailwinds here, we're going to make this work, we can withstand some punches, and or you're like, I don't care, I'm flying around in my PJ, it doesn't matter, I'll just holiday in the Bahamas while you guys figure it all out?
No,
where were you guys along the way there?
I mean, we came from most humblest beginnings. We had debt from the get-go, to the point where, like, when mortgage licensing came into play, I was on probation because I had a vehicle that was it was a repossession, and there was tens of thousands that were owed against it. It was terrible. Partially product of my ignorance when I went into business with others, and part of it just being irresponsible. So we had zero, effectively. I had a VA loan on the house that I mentioned that we had moved into, and I had been frugal enough to get a vehicle that I could afford to buy at the time. And so I had a paid-off truck, and not a nice one. It was like a 2009 F-150, right?
They're like, sir, this truck is worth $0. You're like, but it's paid off.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's not that badass Jeep you showed up with.
No, that's more recent. So I was able to borrow $7,000 against that, and that was like where down payment money came from. So
okay, all right.
I mean, we're talking creatively, fully leveraged, but even still executable to this day, because I still can now afford to have a nice vehicle that is paid off. I've bought houses with cash out refinances on an auto loan because I get a better rate, better deal. The numbers pencil out, right? An Airbnb that makes $2,000 a month is okay if I can pay a $1,200 a month more car payment. Then that place is free and clear in 5 years. So those are some of the dynamics that we were forced into, but then led to strategy in the future. So the financial condition is, okay. We can make the payment. We were frugal is the best word I can say. We eventually budgeted and we had the spreadsheets, and it was just about leverage at that time and working really hard in the day-to-day, because I mean, maybe 6 figures, definitely combined, but individually, like starting to get to that breaking point when it came to like the day-to-day earnings, or the ordinary income type earnings. And then it was just about investing, because we knew what it like to go through the couch cushions for gas money. I mean, like, I literally remember those days.
When you started out, were you of the mindset of we need to generate like stockpiles of cash, or were you like, we're gonna jump into rentals right away, like, or were you a hybrid where you'd buy a flip, then use the profits to buy a rental? Like, how did that work for you guys?
I was effectively on a mission, because we had converted that first property to a rental, or that departure primary we converted to a rental, and it didn't cash flow because it was on a 15-year loan. And so I realized, though, that we could find $300 to $500 a month in cash flow, even with leverage, to a higher degree. And I said, my mortgage is $1,500. Like, I need 3 to 5 properties just to pay the mortgage payment. And I want something other than my regular income to pay the mortgage payment. And once that was accomplished, it was like, how do I get it to pay for the next regular monthly expense? And so as that progressed, as that grew, that became the goal. And then the way that we would get a nicer, like, come up or hit that power band, if we want to stick with like a motorcycle reference, was finding a good equity deal that I could then go borrow it from the bank.
Okay, let's talk acquisitions. You've mentioned several times kind of like finding deals and making deals. How do you go about that? Let's talk about you and Jamie in particular. What did you do to source leads that you could turn into deals, other than just looking on the MLS?
Yeah, I mean, it was still like Craigslist was still a thing.
Yeah.
So she was great at picking up the phone. She came from like a Wells Fargo call center environment, and she had no fear about getting on the phone. So she would pick up the phone, call investors, existing landlords, and we'd potentially buy the tired property that they no longer want anything to do with. And then, of course, just the regular prospecting of she was smart out of the gate and always wanted to find listings. It's one of the contrarian thoughts to what most see as a lender-realtor relationship. They think, oh, they get all the buyers. Like, she just doesn't deal with buyers as often. It's only a seller pre-existing relationship where they became a buyer. So those selling appointments that she would have would ultimately then result in a potential conversation about an opportunity for us to be the buyer. And then as the word got out, because we were just hitting the street with the information, like letting people know what you want to do. Don't be a secret agent, they say, right? If you have a goal and a mission, like, talk about it. It's okay. And even if you think you have some secret sauce, chances are the majority of the people out there aren't actually going to go and implement what you tell them. And so
that's really good what you just said there. I think that's the assumption where people think that if I tell someone like my secrets, quote unquote, even though there's really not that many out there, they're going to go out and steal that idea and like make life harder for me and steal customers and whatever. But reality is 95% of the people are just lazy, and they're going to say, oh yeah, that's great. And then never do anything about it.
It's why I'm purposeful with my words. I said ideas, like, we all get them. They all pop in our head. It's like how we are conditioned to react to those ideas. And if you don't trust yourself, you tend to procrastinate. You come up with reasons like, I should get a rental is the idea. And then they're like, well, what if the toilet breaks? What if they don't pay rent? What if? And then you start just questioning, and then it just results in lack of activity, or this huge desire to have this plan that you think is going to work. And I've spent hours, days, maybe even weeks or months planning something, and the minute I go to execute, it's different. I remember when we sat up in the front of this room here for that meetup, we did not stick to the spreadsheets. Yeah, or not spreadsheets, but the layout that I had. We were completely on a tangent, and so it's actually a deficit to sit and stick in that planning phase too long. So we just took action, and that's one of the biggest encouragements that I have is there's no real great deal. Like there's no special deal there. It's about finding a way to make something a deal, looking at it from enough angles to figure out where the opportunity is.
Well, and I think it's one of those things too where you know, like especially if you're in transactional real estate, like flipping or wholesaling or even the agent business, you're eating what you kill, and then as soon as you absorb whatever deal just happened, you got to go on to the next one and the next one and the next one. But it's being smart about shepherding your dollars into really smart investments, or at least, you know, solid ones that are going to generate income where you can lighten the load on your stress over time, right? Because there's that. I mean, it's life. We're in a business that we love talking about, and it's fun, and you can find deals, and it's sexy, and real estate development is cool, and there's like all these, you know, influencers about real estate investing. But the reality is, it's also life, and it's a job that you have, even if it's your business, right? And you have to be able to like take a step back and say, I want to leverage what we already have to the point where it makes sense to support our lifestyle that we want. And you have to keep your eye on that ball, like in the long term, not just the short term, because, you know, it's easy like when it's 2018, 19, 20, well, maybe not 20. That was kind of an outlier, but like when prices are going up, it's a great time to flip and you can generate a shitload of cash. But what you do with that cash is really important, and it's even more important in hindsight. When interest rates spike, what did you do at the time when it mattered? Did you blow all of it, or did you plow it into like income producing assets that are going to appreciate along with inflation? They're going to make you look smart, and when maybe you're not, like me. But okay, so with all that in mind, there's like ebbs and flows of this, right? So it's not like you're consistently can count on exactly 20 deals or 30 deals or whatever the number is to produce the amount of income that you need to support your lifestyle with 2 kids, a marriage. You want to do better, be better, but like, how do you balance the ebbs and flows of the fluctuations in income with real estate investing and the agent business and the commercial, or not commercial necessarily, but the loan brokerage business where, hey, let's face it, it's been tough the last couple of years, right? Interest rates have gone up. It's been tough for everybody. A lot of agents have gotten out of the business. A lot of brokers have gotten out of the business. I threw a lot at you there. Let's see how you respond.
No, it's
to this.
Great. It's getting used to making hard decisions and knowing that your plan has to be flexible. Yes, at a certain point you got to have the goals and then figure out the plan to help get you to those goals. However, I've been a big advocate of diversification, and I always looked at it and I'm like, well, somebody invested in Microsoft early on and they won, and that was a complete gamble at that point in time. Like there was likely a plan, but they didn't know. And so when Airbnb really came about, or short-term rentals became a thing, we said, let's give this a try, right? It's about being willing to take risk because you have the confidence in yourself that you're going to do what it takes. And worst case scenario, you got to sell, you unwind, you do something to go back to where you can control the majority of the outcomes. And so I remember the first multifamily that we bought. It was a single family conversion, but like literally just would have comfort in throwing an offer out there and being okay with losing the deal. Sometimes we get a little bit too emotionally attached to things. So that helps in those volatile times is not allowing the emotions to control the outcome or the decisions. And then being a little bit more diverse. Like sometimes putting all our eggs in one basket is comfortable, but it can expose us to a lot of risk.
I've gone through this exercise recently, and not like that I planned on really, but I was thinking about a lot. I've been I've had a lot of very stressful situations happen, in particular in 2024, that haven't been fun to deal with. And it's really, so like in the past, if I look back on how I kind of evolved as a real estate investor from just buying deals to like maybe trying to look at the bigger picture and saying, okay, strategically what makes sense, and then trying to execute on that, and enter partners into the picture. And like like I'm involved in various businesses, so it's changed a lot. So like the complexion of my businesses has evolved over the last, I would say 7-8 years, like way more than it ever has.
Even over the last 2 to 3 years, I would say.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. But recently I've been kind of like, I'll be 50 in November this year. So I've, been in this game for 20 years almost, and
really long time.
It changes your perspective when you have been in the game that long, and it's one of those things where early on I was a deal junkie. Like I just wanted to find a really smoking deal, and I would figure it out in the financing, or whether I had to find a bank that would do it, or seller financing, or like I'm just scrapping, right?
Couldn't you buy a house out of a magazine?
Probably, yeah.
The Sears catalog.
Back then, yes, you just pre-assemble, or they ship it to you and you put it up. Yeah, I mean,
I grew up across the street from one of those.
Yeah,
seriously,
nice.
Yeah.
But I recently I've been kind of looking at this like, I've always been one of those that's I really want to achieve as much as I can. I'm a high achiever, but nobody's out there giving me A's for it or giving me an attaboy or so it's your own like lack of validation a lot of times that you're chasing. I'm
100%.
I would love for somebody to grade me and be like, hey man, you're doing great, or like keep it up, or you need to do X, Y, and Z. Not you. I give you
a good grade.
I don't know. I'm not looking at you. You just happen to be in my proximity. But and after a point, I'm kind of like, I'm kind of good. Like I don't. What am I doing? Because I've gotten a backlash of a lot of horrible market conditions, and I've just had random stuff happen this year where I'm kind of really looking at this like I could do that, but do I need to? Do I want to do that? Like what's going to happen to me negatively if I don't do that? Am I going to miss out on something? Maybe. So I think your FOMO over time really decreases, but you still want to achieve and do things that are impactful and affect not just yourself but other people. I'm struggling with that a little bit right now. Is just kind of like finding my new why, or finding something that is something that does it for me.
It's harder to get excited.
It
about
is.
Things
you got to reinvent yourself over and over again, right?
And to your point about being graded, like who's qualified to grade you at the end of the day? And there's sometimes so much diversity in what each individual does. It's more about just getting into the room and having the conversation and finding those people, because they say it's lonely at the top. It kind of is. It's weird. It's like I think earlier on I was saying we sometimes tone ourselves down just to mesh with a room potentially. Instead, go find that room where you're the guy that has to bring yourself up. Yeah,
it's called hiding the light. You have the light or whatever, and it's you don't want to make everybody else feel bad. So then by that you're dimming your own ability to illuminate your growth and advice and all that.
That's the first time you've ever said that. I like that.
I struggle with that too. Where I don't. And there's imposter syndrome is interwoven into all that too, where you don't want to seem like a douche when you're like, oh, I know all this stuff, and people are like, oh, okay, cool guy. You know what I mean?
No,
there's a little bit of that.
But might be trying to solicit some feedback, and instead it's taken because their inability to associate with it
or perceive the same thing that you do from your perspective, when they may have a different one where they're just starting out and struggling and they can't get financing or whatever. And maybe that part's the least of your worries at the time. But so it's an evolving thing over time where you're not the same person you were 10 years ago, and you're not the same investor you were 10 years ago. And your goals may change, and they may change 5 years from now.
But we all have channels. It may be our podcast or our coaching, that it is our job to where we are in our lives, to be able to teach, talk about. People are in our circles are expecting us to talk about this stuff. I'm not in the position that either of you guys are, but we're still expected to talk about what we're doing in our lives, and we're expected to talk about the challenges that we've gone through. I mean, to get where you have been and where you've been, there's been setbacks in your lives. It hasn't been easy, and that's why we have the Failing Forward section, because we talk about the challenges we have, because there's learning lessons that we have gone through, and we got to teach those lessons to the people that are around us, and they want to know those lessons. So you can't hide that light that you mentioned earlier, because it's so important that we expose ourselves and tell people about the challenges we've been through, because we're just like everybody else, and we're no different than anybody else.
It's so true.
I mean, we are the people that are in the networking groups. We're just all in different stages of our lives and careers and growth.
Exactly. It's like a teacher or a doctor. I mean, they're all kids that we grew up with at some point in time.
If you're hiding that light, you are failing the people that are around you, that look up to you. You can't do it, because I'm going to bring it back to the point of me starting this podcast and wanting to get this going. I specifically picked Owen because he was the brightest light in around me. Like, when you went to a real estate meetup, everybody surrounded Owen because of his light. So, Owen, if you're putting that light out that you talked about, I mean, you're really screwing everybody around you. You are, because
if I'm putting out a light, I'm screwing everyone around me.
Yeah, because if you're dimming your light,
putting out by
if you're dimming your light, you're really ruining the people that look up to you, because they are coming to you for advice. They look up to you. They respect you, and that happened before this. We had this channel to put our content out there.
Yeah.
So Brad, don't do it. Owen, don't do it. Myself, I look up to you guys, and I try to put my light out there, but my light's still dim, and I'm still trying to make it burn. And your guys' lights are burning strong, and that's why you're doing coaching. You're trying to figure out Owen, you're really trying to figure out where you're still going with your light. I know, but you guys, I mean, you can't dim it. Like, don't hold back in the rooms that you're in.
Agreed.
Be the brightest light you possibly can be, because people look up to you and respect you guys.
I like it.
Yeah, it's lonely in the light. That's kind of the message. Is like, you don't know what people want or expect, and you just kind of try to do the best you can and put out content that's really going to be hopefully absorbed by people, and they can make something out of it. That, like, if anybody listening to this takes one thing away, it's a win.
Exactly.
It's a win.
And we can't control what their outcome
Right.
is. It's like
everybody's different.
It's like saying I'm not going to give the homeless guy some money because I'm afraid he's going to go buy. It doesn't matter what he's going to do with it. It's the act and the faith that you put forward.
I don't give the homeless guy money. I give it to the charity that supports the homeless guy.
Whichever one. Yeah, exactly. And that's the same thing as it's our responsibility to try to get to make the effort to get into the rooms, to have the conversations, to do stuff like this, to where the relationship will likely deepen and continue on, and that'll lead to another connection relationship, and everybody's about growing and helping one another.
Well, I think, okay, so I didn't just come to this, but if all I had to do was do podcasts and meet with people and help them along their journey, and they didn't have to pay me, but I was still good on bills and lifestyle expenses, like, that's what I would do.
Yeah.
Like, I love just, like, educating people on what to do, but I don't feel like I don't want to be a guru, and this may age badly, but I don't want to be somebody that accepts money for my knowledge. I don't want to do that.
You're not there yet.
I'm not. I may not be,
because you are that guy. You provide those services
for free. I do it for free.
But yeah, I mean, totally could be that guy.
But my time's limited too, and I'm subject to burnout. Yeah. So if I could only do that, and I'm supporting. Shut up, Ted. So I just got what you meant there. But I don't know. I feel like it's a great platform for that, but it's hard to implement because of the time versus money factor and the fact that it's not like I can just sit back on my ass and like all the bills are going to take themselves and whatever. Like I still have to hustle.
Right.
So, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know where we're going with all this, but hopefully somebody listening gets something out of it.
Hey, Brad, we're going to start getting to the conclusion of this podcast. But before we do, one thing that we just really haven't hit in this podcast is what does your portfolio look like today? Like what type of investing? All right, you have a wide array of different types of investing you do. Can you like just give us a brief overview before we wrap up today?
I think that the primary market stuff has, or secondary market securities and stuff have become so correlated that I moved into more private equity type stuff for the more passive types. So I'm invested in small businesses. There's some projects that I'll get into periodically because time is limited. Outside of that, the day-to-day management, we owner manage all of our portfolio. I've got small, mini syndication, if you will, out there in the local market. And then we wholly own few apartment buildings and single family, and then a little bit of commercial office space, some of which is owner occupied, and that comprises about 84 doors. We do a little bit of vacation rental, so outside of Omaha or the Nebraska market, you've got Colorado and Arizona are the two other physical locations that we like or that we have enough familiarity with, and just Florida scares me with the storms and stuff. That's the only reason I haven't been out that way.
Very hard to insure out there.
Yeah, exactly. And so I look for ways to mitigate my overhead. I think Omaha, like, if I looked at $4 million of real estate in Colorado, that is like $8,000 a year in tax bills. $4 million here is like $100,000 in tax bills when I look at our portfolio. So that's the current space and climate, and because of our property management requirements, we look at ways to build like verticals into that, and that's why I'll invest in like a small business or partnership that may be a service-based business that I can align with and help from maybe a business development standpoint.
When we do part 2, and we're going to dig really deep into this side of it, just so you know, out of all the asset classes that you do, what's the favorite? Like, if you could pick one, like, what's your favorite thing to do? Because I know what my favorite thing is.
If you were going to wake up tomorrow and be like, I'm going to go out and find a deal today, what is it?
Ooh.
I'm in that. I love that private equity space and alternative investment stuff right now, to be honest with you. I'm the analytical guy, and so my wife will be the one that will like get into the weeds with that, because I don't. It sucks because I'm sorry that is like an indirect answer. My favorite property is a midterm furnished rental. Like if you said you are forced to pick something like that, it would be sub 10 units and furnished. Outside of that, I like the analytical piece of the process. I like to spreadsheet, and so I find
you just use spreadsheet as a verb.
I just love the analysis, and so it's a private equity deal that may come to an offering. I feel like it's cool. It's limited space, and to me, it's one of the ways to offset where, you know how you go to like an event, a conference, you're like, I'm paying a bunch of money just to go get in that room and have these conversations. There's investment opportunities where you can throw some money at it and you still happen to get into the room and you end up collaborating and having conversations with different minds. That starts to really get the blood flowing.
Brad, the content today has just been absolutely amazing, but we do have our favorite segment of the podcast, and that's called Failing Forward. Ooh. And this Failing Forward is brought to you by RESimply.com. If you're in the real estate game like I am, you know just how wild it can get managing everything from lead tracking to marketing, sales, and operations. That's exactly where RESimply, an all-in-one software for real estate investors, comes in. It's a lifesaver for thousands of investors out there. What's incredible about RE Simply is that it is packed with everything you need. List stacking, driving for dollars, automated drip campaigns, a cold call calling dialer, complete phone system, email management, speed to lead, buyer management, a comprehensive task system, accounting features, and much more. It's like a powerhouse software crafted just for us in the real estate world, eliminating the need for juggling multiple subscriptions and integrations. So check out RE Simply if you want to streamline your investing business and start closing more deals. Sign up through resimply.com/Hartman. That's RESIMPLI.com/HARTMAN. And you'll snag 50% off of your first month. Plus, they're going to throw in a 14-day trial, so don't miss out and give it a look. And with failing forward, this is a learning lesson that you had, but a fail that you definitely had in your personal or business life. Do you have an example of something that you definitely wouldn't take back?
COVID's come up a couple of times, and I would say that the business boom that we experience as a result of it, and the work from home type philosophy that was implemented got me overly comfortable with managing things that I had from a distance. And I didn't realize how that close proximity allowed our team from the mortgage manufacturing side of the business, it allowed us to work together really well. Once upon a time, I got out of being in an office by myself, and I created like a bullpen type of a setup. And then when that work from home philosophy came into play, I embraced it a little too much. I moved into different markets and actually left Omaha market for a while, and that caused deterioration of the team. And I think I could have done a better job of being present even from a distance, but I just allowed that to degrade. So I'd say the finding and nurturing that flow you can get in with a team when you have a team in your operation. Don't let it fail, and don't allow distance to create too much space. Zoom, I should have been more integrated, more planned, more structured in my engagement with the team, instead of just like letting it, assuming it was going to still work and operate on its own the same as it was if I was there.
I think there should be a white paper on what exactly businesses, or what businesses really thrive during the pandemic for future reference, just as like hey, just in case, break this glass and pull this document out, like if the shit hit the fan and we're like, bird flu 3.0 or whatever comes through and it wipes out, however many people, like, do these things, buy a company that manufactures face masks, or like what were all the
Go
things
do
that we went
PPP
through?
loans.
Yeah, there were like, personal protection, PPE, and then there was like meat. There was a meat shortage for a long time.
And
Amazon,
sanitizer, Amazon really blew
Toilet
up.
paper.
Just Amazon
toilet
general
paper.
Yeah.
And but I remember so I stood in line at there was a brewery downtown, Brickway Brewery. Shout out. They decided to turn some of their distillery into help me.
Sanitation. It was the sanitation stuff.
Oh, like hand
Sanitizer.
sanitizer.
Hand sanitizer.
That's why
Yeah.
it smelled like booze and stuff. For a
Totally.
while.
And they would come along and they would spray like whatever your container was that you wanted them to fill up with like tequila. That was basically the gist of it. I stood in line for like 8 hours or something. Not that long. It was probably like 4 hours, but there were like me and then a 6 foot space in front of the person in front of me, and then they'd come along and be like, okay, how we doing out here? Trying to keep morale high. Mm-hmm. And then they were like spraying your stuff down with tequila or whatever it was. It totally smelled like it too. I brought that sanitizer home and like Jen's like, that smells like ass. And I'm like, totally does. But what are you gonna do?
It's so weird to reflect back to that time period.
It was like could never happen now.
Just a couple years ago. I mean, I remember being like a year into it. And I'm like, I cannot believe we're still into this lifestyle. And never in my life did I think we'd be into this a year later. And then and the only thing that makes me like reflect on that is Facebook. It has it has those reflect,
Oh,
Memories.
yeah. This
memories.
time 3 years ago.
Yes, and,
yeah.
and it went through a point where for I think 4 months I did a post every single day, and it was just like a black background with white letters, and it says, "Never did I ever think that my hair would be this long," or whatever it was, And
Yeah, well, you should maybe revisit that. I'm just saying.
You love my hair.
Check YouTube.
You love my
people.
hair.
No.
I end up being on a plane for whatever reason more than I want to be, and I can't believe that I still have to put in an email address and a phone number, and I'm attesting to a regulation that I'm going to be subject to civil penalties because I don't provide this tracking information. It's creepy. I did not. It was discomforting.
COVID changed the world.
It sure did.
So, well, I mean, Brad, I really think that we could go another hour with this, but
I would enjoy it.
But you do have some stuff coming up, and so our time is coming to an end here soon. And we do have our most famous section of the podcast, and this is the OT with Owen and Ted,
where we've got a set of questions we ask every guest. We've got them lined up for you. I think you know some of these, but maybe some are going to be a plot twist.
It's going to be a reminder, yes.
Yeah. All right, so the first question for you is, what is the first book that you're going to release titled or about?
Foundations of Fortune is my goal title.
He's reaching for something here.
It's
Fact checking.
right there.
But you have the
it's
cover done.
I do have the cover done. So
Is this the first time it's ever been released on anything podcast wise?
yes.
Oh.
There's one publication that is where it was intended to actually come out, but it says Navigating Marriage,
Joe Rogan.
Relationships, and Business with Purpose and Passion. So I'd say it's about halfway, if not 3/4 of the way written. I wanted some like outsider submission from couples that are in business together to share just, hey, here's my personal story nugget. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. And the goal release date is actually like October.
When we have Jamie on, I'm going to ask her so many questions because I'm trying to create different. I'm trying to get my wife more and more involved in our business. She's a full-time school teacher, but she is CEO material written all over.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she is a implementer. She's not the visionary, but she's the person that can put everything together, organize it, and everything will be done before deadline.
Love that.
And it blows my mind what she's able to do with that. And if I could just get her to be more in our business, I know that we could grow it tenfolds. So the day that we get Jamie on, I'm just gonna quiz.
You're going to ambush her.
Well,
Yes,
and
got
connect them. I mean, that's what she's very passionate about, women and mostly like women with passion or feel like they have a nice purpose, because the woman's life is very challenging, in my opinion, too. Trying to keep the house in order, and then if they work outside the home, there's that too, and then there's the relationship side of it. So she has some really good strategic partnerships with people who get into like a little more of the scientific space, but connect them offline too.
I will definitely do that. I'm going to tell you, Jessica's been gone on a work trip for a week now. So this is every year I run the house for a week, and then I was really impressed. I'm like, because I kind of run the outside of the home, she runs the inside of the home, and I'm like, babe, look at that. You got loads of laundry going, the house is clean, the meals are going, and I'm the cooker in the house, just so you know. So I do take that role.
Cooker?
I'm the chef. The
Okay.
chef of the house. Is that better?
That's
Is that better, Owen Dashner?
I don't know. Cooker? Is that? Are you satisfied with your reply?
I mean, I really feel like you just
Yeah, the cooker.
you just kind of make everything.
Ted the
Slow
cooker.
cooker.
He just makes me sound like an ass every time.
I don't feel like I'm doing that at all. I feel like you're saying the words. I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking.
Oh shit!
Okay, so the second question is,
Moving on.
so we're on your podcast. You can interview anyone in the world today. Who is it, and what's the one question you want to ask?
Are they alive?
Yes, please.
Oh.
Because we've gotten Jesus way too many times.
I would have said Napoleon Hill. But I want somebody to pick me apart, you know? Like, I've always enjoyed the leaders that I've had in my life that have been honest and caring enough to get uncomfortable as far as the direction and of the conversation or how direct they are in their feedback. So, today, they're alive.
I tell you what, while you're saying about that, I mean, if I could interview anybody in the world, you know, dead or alive, it would be my biological father that I've never met. You know, there's plenty of questions I'd love to ask him, you know, just because I've never met him. But I feel like when you if it's somebody alive today that you really just kind of, it's somebody that could be impactful, a question, maybe they're making an impact in the world. You know what I mean?
I would have said my son, but I already interviewed him. And that's always fun just because you get into, there's a different space here than there is because you're
Who's the biggest person that influences you? Like who's the person that that you read about?
I would say I actually probably would love to interview with Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
That dude is a absolute genius. He is so aware, which is the book I was actually earlier. I was thinking I wanted to recommend. It's Power of Awareness, a Neville book. But his ability to ask the right questions, interpret both your nonverbal and verbal communication. So let's go with Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins is on our top 10 dream list.
I respect I respect Tony Robbins a lot, and other, you know, people that are gurus in the self-help space, because they're so under a microscope themselves that it's, I would imagine, really, really, really difficult to do anything right in the world's opinion of you. And even though you're influencing thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people, like, people are going to shine a light on your personal life and be like, oh yeah, bro, what about that time in 1996 when you had that, deal with the chick at college or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so I think it's just so impactful that the microphone that influencers have can be so powerful for people that need to hear it. Mm-hmm. But it can be detrimental in a bad way. It can be detrimental to the people that are putting out the message, because there's trolls everywhere.
Absolutely.
And you have to have such a thick skin when you're on the receiving end of that, that it's intimidates so many people that they just don't do it. And I think that's a shame, because there are a lot of people out there that probably don't love the limelight, that probably have so many valuable things to share with humanity in general that we will never get to hear.
Exactly. Because
they are just so damaged from negative feedback.
Have you ever been in the same room as him, Tony?
No.
So I've invested pretty well in some of his stuff.
Sounds like a humble brag, but
in myself for his events.
I think it was Pace Morphy that we interviewed that said that was his guy, and then he paid for him to sit with him for 8 hours straight with like 4 other people.
Well, I wasn't one-on-one with him. I've not had necessarily direct conversation. The energy that he has and the passion that he puts in the position that he's at right now, it's like, it was humbling to me to just know, like, his passion and his purpose is so big that he still shows up at this age putting this level of stress on his body. Because, I mean, I pulled an all-nighter just one night because the events go so long and they start early and they don't break. And so to know that he's there because he knows the impact that he's making, and to put it all out there like that, it's crazy.
Indeed. All right, so we're at your funeral. Someone is walking up to the front to give your eulogy. Who is it? What are they going to say about you?
This goes so many different ways.
More than likely my wife, because she's going to be
Because she's younger.
She's like, I tried to get rid of this guy once.
But who knows? She'll tell it like it is, I'm sure. But nobody's been with you through that much stuff and seen your worst and seen your best and everything in between is going to tell a better story.
Is she going to be able to do it though? Is she going to be able to like not freak out?
I'm a brag, but there's probably nothing she can't do, even if she doubts it. But I think she would do it because if I live up to who I want to be, there'll be lessons to be learned, and somebody's got to tell that damn story.
Yeah, I love that. It's such a deep question, and
morbid too.
And Brandon Turner stole it from us. So
you just can't wear a hat at my funeral, all right?
Can't?
No, you gotta flow those locks.
It's growing, buddy. It's growing. Owen hates them.
No, nobody wants to see that.
What man in your life has had the biggest impact on you, on either your business or personal growth in your life? Like, what's somebody that you've looked up to that you want to give a shout out to?
Personal, like, connection type.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say my grandfather was a very strong influencer for me.
I love it when it's family like this. So yeah, what was his impact on you?
Like, he demonstrated what it was to like master your craft, and so I must have taken something from that unknowingly, because he was very much a slow down and I'm going to learn and I'm going to do at my best. And then he was a Southside Irish union worker from Chicago. And so didn't matter how uncomfortable or how long he had to work, he did it. And so like that work ethic, I think, was ingrained in me pretty early on.
You were just missing the red hair.
Yeah. But yeah, lost touch with him. He's in Florida.
He's still around?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
that's awesome.
You know, we have a passion project on the side where we interview people and talk about their history, preferably like 70 plus years old. So maybe we can talk about that and we can do a little interview of him of his.
You'd hear the same thing over and over again. He'd forget the first thing he said.
That's fine.
And I remember back in the that's going to be me in like 10 years.
It's okay. It's okay.
So, Brad, how can our listeners support you, and what's the best way to reach out to you?
Oh, I'm old, as we talked about, 40. My wife makes a point to say. So Facebook is one of the primary places that I live. I'm working on Instagram and embracing that a little bit more. But the social space is likely the best place to start for a single point. And then, as you mentioned, we're working on a rebrand for the podcast. So eventually the Invested Souls podcast will come out, and keep an eye out for it. But for now, it's Flipping Flanagan's.
I love that.
Nice.
And just so you know, you're the second youngest person in the room. Just so you know.
I like it.
Brad, you really kind of came out in the scene in the last 6 months. You really just started making a presence, even though you've been making an impact for years, obviously. But it seems like you just really kind of been going out and making yourself out there and putting yourself out there and putting your personality out there. And you know, there's people that are interested in you and want to learn more about you. So I think that we're going to get a lot of listeners just on that topic. I mean, I give one example, Marty Cromwell.
Yeah.
But as soon as I met you, I was totally interested and want to learn more about you. So thank you so much for coming on today. I think it's been a great podcast. And if you listen to this for the first time or the 125th podcast,
Congratulations.
Please give us a 5-star review. Give us a written review, and we'll read that on there. We haven't had a good written review in the last couple months, so we need a good written review, and we'll talk about that. And but thank you again, and we'll definitely get you in front of our REIA group here locally sometime soon. We'll put that on our YouTube channel, so REIA Radio, if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel yet. But with that, Owen Dashner, we see us out.
On behalf of Devin Holcomb, Ted Kosh, and REIA Radio, I'm Owen Dashner, and you've been listening to Brad, the Evil Knievel of real estate investing, Flanagan. Signing off.
Radio it.
On behalf of Dennis.
Radio it. Radio it.
On behalf of Dennis
Radio
Holcomb, Ted Kosh,
Radio it.
Will you shut up?
Get your shit together and then do it.
Hey, stop. On behalf of why can't I do this?
I don't know.
What's wrong with me?
Honestly, got stoned beforehand.
Slapping. Oh shit!